Hi, everybody. Good morning. When I was young, I wanted to be a CEO. So what that basically means is I didn't know what the hell I wanted to do. Right? I can't go tell my parents that, hey, my dream is to be a CEO. They're going to be like, just study for your unit test or whatever you call it these days. Right? So I had no idea what I wanted to do. And therefore, I did engineering because that just makes the most sense. Right? I ended up going a bit Spilani. I loved the college immensely, but I didn't quite loved what I studied. Right? I didn't find a love for engineering. So obviously, like most engineers, I think the stat now is about 80% of engineers in colleges, mostly in India, decide to do something else. So I decided to do an MBA because at a high level, it felt like problem solving. And I thought that, I can do this. I do like problem solving. I just maybe don't like engineering per se. So, and while I was in school, I wasn't a very conscientious student. I was a little laid back and I was just having a good time. But in college, I became very conscientious, very hardworking. So I decided to not just, apply for an MBA, but I decided to, apply myself for about 3-4 years to build an MBA profile, to really do it well, right? Do this exceptionally well. And in that process, I joined consulting, which in a couple of years, you guys will understand is a decent pre-MBA thing to do. And in that process, my life changed. COVID happened, right? And, while this is very privileged for me to say, for me, it was a good thing. I decided to build a plasma donation app for COVID-19 patients. And I decided then, or I realized then, that I loved building. I loved solving a problem. And that's when, about 10, 12 years later, I realized that, hey, being a CEO is something viable. Not for the fancy title, not because it looked cool on Forbes when I was growing up, but because you actually get to solve a problem for a large number of people and maybe one day end up building an enduring organization. That was what I started off with. Today, in short, what I do, actually, my intro was already given, so we're not going to repeat that. But I run a fintech startup. I'm a finance educator with an edtech company. I was part of the Forbes list in the category of finance, and I've really seemed to understand that finance, understanding money, understanding how to make it, how to manage it, is really a key way to elevate yourself from almost most problems that you have, right? Money can't buy happiness, but money can probably buy a lot of other things. Now, as the years, have gone on, I think what I've noticed is that a lot of people in today's generation, right, mostly like you guys, super ambitious, right? I think you all want to be CEOs and actually makes sense. But fundamentally, what does a CEO do? At a high level, you're someone with a vision or trying to solve a problem. For example, I saw that couples find it really tough to manage their shared expenses. They use Splitwise, they use all these other apps. So I thought, hey, let me just build something that makes it super simple for couples to do. So that's a vision to solve a problem. But at a very basic level, I'm just a guy managing money, right? We get money from venture capitalists, we get money from customers, we spend money for vendors or things we have to buy as a company. So I'm just at a lower level as a very, very basic money manager. That's what I am. And when I started doing this, I realized something else, that, everybody is the CEO of their own lives. And I realized that I'm the CEO not just of this company, but I'm the CEO of what I would call Brand Srini, right? Now, Brand Srini runs a company. Brand Srini, plays pickleball. Brand Srini learns finance, speaks at events like this once in a while. Brand Srini has to keep doing this. And for that, Brand Srini needs to learn how to earn money, learn how to manage money, and just learn how to understand money, where it comes from. So today, what I want to really do is take you through a whole story of money that humanity has learned over the years, right? I think money seems very, very, very basic that, we have it now. Now we have it on UPI, as most people know. But how did all of this really originate from? What are some hard lessons that humanity has learned along the way? Did we all always think of money the same way? Or was there a definitive period where money really elevated society hundreds of years back? And is there a period now where technology has helped elevate society even more in terms of money? Now, I want to start with a time before money, which was the barter system, right? I think everybody here obviously knows what the barter system is. Long back, for hundreds and hundreds of years, for God knows what reason, people used to actually, if I have to buy chickens and I had shoes, right, I would actually have to go all around to actually find a person who had chickens, who wanted shoes and was willing to make the trade. And for some reason, it took hundreds of years for it to truly evolve to a point where they could actually agree on having one common source of value that, hey, you know what, we both need something that's common, something like salt. Today it's money. And that is how money actually first evolved. The first currency humanity actually had was salt. And it's very interesting that the Latin word for salt is salarium. So even today, the word salary is actually derived from the word salarium, which was the first form of salary ever paid to Roman soldiers. But money has obviously evolved dramatically since then. How much money do you think exists in the world right now? Do you think it's around a few $1 trillion or probably more? Maybe a small show of hands. $100 billion. Does that make sense? Okay, probably more. Today, about $90 trillion of money is actually in circulation. But only about 10% of that is actually cash, right? Or 10% of that is cash. Today, if everybody wanted to actually withdraw all their money from their respective bank accounts, the banks couldn't actually let you do that. 90% of money today is just in the form of computers. It's form of zeros and ones in computers saved in bank servers. That was the first evolution of money that we got to see. That today, money in your pocket is not the only money that you store at the bank. This was the most, I would say, definitive leapfrog that the history of money actually made. Do you know who this guy is? A show of hands who knows who this guy is. See, one person. So this guy's name is Frank. Frank was one day in the 1950s, I assume, was in a diner one day, and he had a hefty meal, and he got a hefty bill after that, and he realized that he forgot to bring his wallet. So he was obviously very, very shocked. So he decided, now what do I do? So of course he calls his wife up. His wife drives down, brings him his wallet, and he clears the bill. And this guy realizes that, hey, you know what? I come to this diner all the time. Right? Shouldn't this guy trust that, hey, if I don't pay the bill today, maybe I could pay it some other day, right? Maybe I could pay it the next time. And he actually could swing that with that particular diner, and he got this little offer where, you know what, you can pay us once a month. And he realized that why can't you do this everywhere, right? Why can't there be a system in place where you don't have to use money that you actually have to buy something? And he started a very iconic company called Diners Club. And Diners Club launched the world's first credit card. And that was the first time humans could actually spend money that they didn't have, which completely changed the way people thought of money. Suddenly, people didn't have to have the cash right now. They could buy now, pay it later, right? And now, obviously, spending money that you don't have causes a lot of problems, right? There's a famous quote which says that too many people spend money they don't have to buy things they don't need to impress people they don't like. And I think that's exactly what this guy's invention pretty much did. But if you take a step back, when did money really become so complicated? I think for a long time, for thousands of years, I mean, forget the 5,000-6,000 years back when people were, trading chickens. Over the thousands of years succeeding that, right? Money was actually not very complicated. Money was just used to pay your taxes, to buy food, and to just survive. But then the Industrial Revolution came, and that's when money really changed. People could now earn outsized amounts of money. Imagine a time, and this could be tough to imagine, where everybody in the world pretty much had the same amount of money. Like everybody had 1 lakh rupees. Everyone's almost the same. You buy the same things, you do the same things. But till the Industrial Revolution, I mean, that's when it really changed. Some people had outsized amounts of money. People bought land, buildings, anything to show, I can do things, right? And here is when money became about greed. Money became about influence. Money became about power, a symbol of power. And then it goes all the way down. About 300 years after that, or maybe I'll take a step back to people who study history, obviously, right? Do you guys know what's going on here? Just a show of hands. You don't have to answer it. Aha, awesome. Yeah, I mean, I learned this in this school as well. But incidentally, this is from the German hyperinflation. So long story short, after World War I, Germany had a big debt to pay out. And I bring this point up because so many people till today, 30-year-olds like myself, people older than me, genuinely believe that, hey, if a country is in debt, why don't they just print more money, right? But no, where Germany was in serious debt back in the 1920s. They decided that, you know what, let's just print money and therefore pay off all our debts. But with basic supply demand, economics, you realize that when you print more money, more people have money, and therefore the price of goods just go higher. This is basic inflation, maybe your first inflation lesson, but this is hyperinflation. Inflation usually is about 6% every year, 8%, 4% based on the strength of the economy, trade, things that are beyond the scope of today's discussion. But this was about 100% every few hours. There was a time when you would have to carry a barrel like this to go buy a single loaf of bread. And I don't mean this nice loaf that you see nowadays, just a single loaf of bread. And sometimes you would have to, leave your workplace so quickly on a certain Wednesday to buy the loaf of bread because you've gone with one barrel, but by the time you reach, it's actually about 2 barrels of this, right? About 3 trillion, 4 trillion Deutschmarks. So this taught us something else as well, right? That money is obviously a tool, something that can elevate us, but money is an excellent servant, but a terrible master. And I think these are the things that, if we imbibe early on in life, we know that, that while you can leverage money, use money, there are also things that we have collectively as humanity where things like this can happen. And things like this can happen in your personal lives very easily as well, if you just aren't that careful. Now, money obviously has evolved since then as well as to how we look at money. Today, oftentimes, I see a horde of, I see a spectrum of different age groups here. And it's very fundamental to actually remember that, different generations look at money very differently. And this is very critical when you do business with anyone. And when I say do business, I even mean when you're trying to negotiate something with your father, right? If you need something from him, you need anything and he needs to buy you. You need to understand that the 3 fundamental generations, which is baby boomers, or Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z, look at money very, very differently. For baby boomers, it's a sense of security. They were born in a time of relative scarcity where money was, a way for them to actually elevate themselves, to own a home for the first time, to probably get educated, to probably educate their kids, likely abroad as well. For millennials, we were born in a time of relative abundance. We did see a time when we were, I got my first pocket money or my first many years of pocket money in cash. And then later it evolved to, cards and UPI and things like that. But then there are Gen Z where you're completely born in a generation where money is just on your phone. Now, one very interesting thing I've seen evolve, right, and people maybe of all age groups can kind of agree, is long back baby boomers and say my parents and that generation used to say that, unless you actually hand over cash, you don't know that the money is going. That's why it's so easy to spend on UPI and on card and things like that. That's what I was told, that, while cards are a great thing, please keep cash. Because when you give cash, you know that you're losing some money. And today, I hear Gen Z people saying, you know what, I have a bank balance of say 1 lakh. Now, I withdrew 40,000 to make some kind of a payment. But now because my bank balance says 60,000, I feel I only have 60,000. I'm like, no, but you have the cash as well, right? The 40,000 that you would do. No, that doesn't feel like that's my money. My money is what I see on a phone. It's this kind of fundamental differences that I've seen. A lot of you can probably resonate really hard with this on both sides, right? So understanding how different generations look at money makes it very easy for you to navigate how you even deal with people in your lives today, like parents, for example, or friends, and in your lives tomorrow. So where are we going with this, right? Now, what are the kind of takeaways that I would love for people to actually think about and implement, at any stage of life, right? One is that start early and be smart about money, right? Starting early in terms of just basic habits of something as simple as saving, something as simple as creating a budget, something as simple as using apps to kind of track where your money flows. I think it's a very, very important lesson that, people in our age group actually didn't get, right? We earned our salaries only then. We got these awesome budgeting apps to use when we've already developed these kind of habits, right? Probably bad ones. But if you can do that early on, that would be great. When I was young, I started like different pouches where I would split the pocket money for different things that I wanted to buy. Like I wanted to buy a cycle. I'm like, oh, this is the pouch for my pocket money for the cycle, for example, right? So starting early in any way or form, right? Even understanding these stories of money that I've mentioned can really help you think about it, right? Can really help you get some perspective. The next is, there's a lot said on social media about, and I'm sure all of you are on social media, as am I, that, there are so many strategies of investing and managing your money. And if you just invest X amount of money by the time you're 15, and when you're 50, you would have compounded it to etc. And compounding is great. But I think a fundamental decision that drives how much money you make and how much money you manage in your life is not so much about how you manage money, but it's about what you do and where you do it. Identifying what that career should be, what that direction should be, right? Where you'll actually make money. Whether it's here, for example, today the tech industry, venture capitalists are pouring a lot of money into startups. So many people want to work at startups. A lot of people here are science students, would love to do engineering, work at a startup. That makes sense, right? Understanding where to put your time is probably the biggest decision, almost more important than actually managing money itself, right? So focus on what you do and where you do it. And lastly, I want to take this example, which is not very money related, but the example of the credit card. As someone who's now a fintech founder who's built essentially a joint account where couples have RuPay cards and Visa cards to make payments, and understanding about this credit card example, what we realize is that the idea that Frank had and the way I explained it is so simple, right? That why can't I have a tab everywhere? Like, why can't I go to the diner, to the grocery store, to the salon, give my card and then pay it back later? It seemed like a simple problem and seemed like a simple solution. Cool, you have your tab and you pay it back at the end of the month. But actually it requires a very complicated system in the back end, right? And I think everybody here is very conscientious, very hardworking, very smart, probably very technologically aligned to know that the whole thinking behind simple problems just requires simple solutions is just not true. Today we actually can, make complicated solutions that can really solve problems exceptionally well. And that is exactly what that credit card story should tell you. It takes multiple systems and multiple players to actually align to give you that provision to actually make a payment and then pay it back later. And lastly, and this is what I say everywhere I go, to be honest, is the best way to predict the future is to actually create it. Predict your future as the CEO of your own brand, or to predict whatever you think the future should be. Thank you.